It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call together the March 16th, 2023 school committee meeting. If you would, for those of you who can, stand, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you very much. This evening we have a consent agenda posted, as well as our minutes from our March 9th meeting, both the bills and payroll. I'd like to accept the motion to accept those as printed.
I move to accept the consent agenda and the meetings from the March 9th meeting.
Motion made.
Second that.
Seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Let's do roll call.
Aye.
All right. Do you want me to do it by name?
If she's voting.
Sure. All right. We'll go back and do that roll call, please. So, Brad?
Brad also votes yes.
Brad votes yes. Justin McCarthy votes yes.
Yes.
And Jen?
Jen Gold votes yes.
Perfect. 4-0. Unanimous. Passes. All right. We'll move on to our presentation portion of the evening. We have a single agenda item this evening, which is the fiscal year 24 budget public hearing. Includes a presentation, discussion, and hopefully a possible motion and a passed budget. This is going to be a joint presentation by myself, a member of the budget subcommittee, as well as Superintendent Schcmte. So we will move to the podium and get underway. Right.
Spread out. Spread out. I like it.
All right, perfect. This first slide basically just highlights the administrative team of the district as well as the school committee. It's a joint effort to put this budget presentation together, and just want to thank all of those that were involved as well. And then we'd like to start with the mission statement of the district, which is: our mission is to foster a community of learners who strive for excellence and prepare each student to be a successful contributing citizen in a global society. And then, of course, we've got the values outlined by the district, which is respect, responsibility, integrity, accountability. And at this point in time, I'll pass it over to Superintendent Schcmte to highlight the accomplishments of the various schools. And a lot of this information we've heard before as it relates to our strategic plan, but since it's budget season, we want to display and highlight where all of these wonderful resources go. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hey. The mission statement and the strategic plan are key drivers in the formation of our budgets from year to year. So as Justin pointed out, it's important that we spend some time taking a look at accomplishments that align with our strategic plan. And many of the components of our strategic plan are aligned to our budget. So it ties in quite nicely. As a district, the strategic plan is our roadmap. When our teachers set goals, when our administrators set goals, it's tied into the strategic plan. It's also tied into the individual school improvement plans. Elementary accomplishments, we have 5 standards in our strategic plan. And when we're looking at reporting out on our accomplishments, we like to adhere to the standards of the strategic plan. So for K-5, under curriculum, instruction, and assessment, we continue to take a look at K-5 vertical alignment, making sure that the teachers from different grades meet together. It's important that our curriculum is well aligned, and the teachers in each grade know what's happening before students come into their classrooms and what they need to know before they go into the next classroom. So it's something we really believe in and value. We conducted a math curriculum review, and as a result, implemented a new math program this year called Into Math. Budget implications of moving to Into Math: $170,000 for resources, and $20,000 for professional development to make staff have to make sure staff have the support that they need to implement the program with fidelity. These supports will continue for 3 years to ensure that teachers do have the support that they need to follow the new curriculum. Continued implementation of a writing program. We talked about this before. I'm still very impressed with the excitement that our students have in K-5 to writing. I mean, it's been transformational within our district. So it was an excellent move to make. Kudos to our teachers for, again, implementing this program with fidelity. That's the key to success in any implementation of a curriculum. We continue to use and develop grading rubrics for each grade and consistency between the grades. Rubrics allow it's an opportunity to make sure that when you're marking student work with your standards-based report cards, that there's a consistency from each classroom, and then there's a consistency in how we develop rubrics in each grade as well. So everybody's on the same page. The students know exactly what's expected of them, and it's pretty easy to use exemplars and samples when you use rubrics for grading. So again, commend staff on continuing with that work. As we all know, we use regular data reviews using MAP assessments. We have used something called a cadence that takes a look at math and literacy skills. We're going to be putting that to the side next year, and with our new early literacy screening tool that will replace that part of it. We'll be using, I shouldn't probably call it early literacy screening, but it is. We're going to use that K through 5. So we're going to get some good data from that and make sure that our students get the supports that they need to be successful. Continue with implementation of the Integrity Phonemic Awareness Program in K1. We've talked about this. We felt that we needed a little more than just foundations at those grade levels. We've extended foundations to grade 3, and we are noticing a significant difference in reading skills of our students. And definitely taking care of some of the things that some of our early readers experience in terms of letter reversal, etc. So we're really pleased with that program as well. A highlight too of this year is we were able to reintroduce curriculum related field trips. It's so nice to be able to take our kids out of the school again and take them to different venues to learn or extend their learning from what they experience in their classrooms. We've talked a lot about implementing UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and tied in with also SEL and MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. So again, it's alive and well. Very impressed with the PD that we're offering for those areas, and I am noticing a difference in our classrooms. When you're looking at new programming and new strategies, you always have to be looking within the classrooms and making sure that they have the support that they need to move forward with the implementation of these concepts. I truly believe that using Universal Design for Learning and MTSS, we're going to be catching kids earlier than we normally do and offering in-class supports, tier 2 supports, tier 3 supports, excuse me, prior to recommending testing for special education. So I'm optimistic and beyond that we will reach more students and fewer students who will need to be placed on IEPs. Professional development, excuse me. Again, we've been providing PD to our staff on the writing curriculum and math curriculum. It's been a major focus, K to 5. As I've already said, it's paying off. Our next venture is to take a look at our reading program, and we've already started to do that. We're going to be closely looking at the science of reading philosophy, and I'm hoping to see a pilot in grades K to 5 prior to the end of next year. Just as a comment, been in education a number of years, and I caution everybody when we're looking at new approaches to doing business. We've been using programs for many years that have been very successful. It doesn't mean that we shelve the whole program. The job of our director of teaching and learning and our staff is to look at what needs to be kept with the current programs that we have, and then move into science of reading as we move forward. We've already purchased some resources for our reading specialists. They're decoding books, and so we've already actually started exploring the area, excuse me, science of reading, so I'm excited about that. We continue to practice learning and discussions of culturally responsive instruction, which is so important. We had a PD day, excuse me, first day back, or with Ken Williams is a cross-district PD day. Ken Williams talked about equity for all, and he did it in a way that tied in all forms of equity. And I have to say, I've been watching what's happening in our schools, and this gentleman had a huge impression on what's happening in our classrooms in terms of making sure that we use strategies and we are listening and making sure that we're promoting equity at all levels, which is really important as well. Our PD days, most of our PD days were faculty led or in-school PD days. We felt that our staff really needed more time to work together. So I believe the split was 77% school-based and faculty-led, and the rest was district PD, and that's what we thought we really needed to do this year. I know our director of teaching and learning is thrilled. Thank you so much, and I am as well to see all the good things that our staff are doing, and by faculty-led, that's actually being led by our teachers themselves. So there's an area of interest that they'd like to share with other staff. And it's really nice to see our staff do that and have the confidence to do that with fellow colleagues. Excuse me, culture climate. We obviously continue with our school safety drills and fire drills. From year to year, created some additional door signage. We continue the use of second step SEL and social thinking lessons, which makes a significant difference in the skill sets our students acquire. K-5, in terms of SEL specific strategies that we use: anti-bullying, anxiety, stress reduction, executive functioning. All of those components are imperative to make sure that our students move forward with their SEL skill development. We continue with monthly classroom diversity readings, which is really kind of cool to have these readings in place for our students. Our teachers have an opportunity to share these texts with them, and then have rich discussions after they finish reading the texts together. Spirit days are alive and well in our district, and I have to say, it's not just our kids that have fun, our staff have equally as much fun. It's really nice to see staff get together and celebrate various things, and again, it helps build culture and climate within our schools. A very successful strategy that actually works well. We've invited more families in this year to celebrate their cultures. I think that's a great way to go. We can hear from families within our community and their special celebrations. It's very meaningful for our students and our staff to partner with our parents. And Shaker Lane, excuse me, created a new vision, and it's we are building a safe, caring, and ready to learn community, which is very fitting to our K-2 school. We're offering the WIN elective. We've been doing that for a number of years at Russell Street. It's what I need, and it's been very helpful in helping students that are struggling with certain concepts and academic subjects. Community communication. Michelle has created a kindergarten ambassador program, which is very popular, and a new family buddy program. I really enjoy listening to the second grade podcast. What a great way for our students to have an opportunity to have their voice heard beyond the classroom and school level. Shakey's virtual storytime night. As I said many times, there are some things that we learned during the pandemic that we need to continue with, and this is one of them. The continuation of the virtual dance party. I've heard that people are upping their game at homes, and they're actually getting disco balls in the background, etc. So obviously it's a big hit at home, and whenever you have disco balls, you know you've hit success. So good job, Michelle and Cheryl, for making sure that you know that approach to bringing people together remains alive and well.
Sorry, is that on the rubric? Disco balls is exemplar, or is that
We have a rubric for everything.
on here?
And we need to petition the state to add it to the state's.
That's
Right,
right.
dog this movie.
Community projects, which are so important, that it needs to really start at a young age so they understand the importance of diversity in our communities and beyond, and working on projects that help people in need. We've really reestablished our partnership with LHS, our high school, having interns and mentors, K-5, and at the middle school as well. It's remarkable to see what happens when you bring our high school students down into these lower grades. Our students really look up to them, and they're doing a great job interacting with our students and you know, forming friendships and helping them out. A great program. I'm so glad that it's becoming more prevalent in our schools after the pandemic. Empowering family events as well is very popular, and family forums. Technology, we're doing a lot there. Continued digital citizen program, K-5, which is really important, is because our younger students are using technology more and more. I'm not going to say a lot about this section, but we have been really monitoring what's happening in our schools this year, and I'm really pleased at what our staff are doing in terms of finding a balance between when is it right to use computers, when does it enhance learning, and when do you use other traditional strategies that are equally as effective. And our computer time is down, obviously, compared to the pandemic, but I really see and hear thoughtful conversations going on, and I see these things happening in our classrooms. So it's nice to know that technology doesn't solve everything, but there's a need for it, and there's a use for it during the right times. This all just touch few TVs, as we've talked about before. They've been a great addition to our classrooms and have offered different ways of teaching our students with various instructional strategies. We have family STEM nights that are a real hit as well. And all these things take a lot of time from our staff and administration, but they value the connections with the community. And it's important to establish strong partnerships, work together to educate the children in middle school curriculum instruction and assessment. I haven't heard the word spiral for a while, but we align our ELA curriculum. It's a spiral curriculum, 6 through 8, built, which really just simply says it builds on previous learning. But that's important that you have those linkages in place. The science department, 6 to 12, have begun their science review. I'm excited about that. We have some great science offerings in our district, and we need to reflect and see what we're doing well, and perhaps explore other areas that we may want to venture into. Increased expectations for projects and assessments require students to transfer and apply content knowledge, higher learning, demonstrate proficiency, and ultimately reduce homework load. We have a lot of conversations about homework in our district, and we are making some strides, but there are more strides that need to be made in terms of coordination of exams and assignments. A little more difficult at the high school, but they are working together to try to make it happen. So I appreciate their investment in doing this. Professional development, again, culturally responsive instruction, SEL. Their advisory program has been enhanced this year, and they provided additional training, which promotes more academic discourse. Heard lots of positive things from students and staff with the beefed up program, so to speak. Professional development, again, UDL seems to be everywhere you look in our district, and it's a district-wide initiative and something we're going to continue to promote within our district for the next few years and beyond. Well, already talked about Ken Williams and his impact on equity, faculty-led PD, culture and climate are some of our behaviors this year after the pandemic have taken some time Some behaviors in our schools, our teachers and administrators have never experienced before. And that means that there's more central office support required to support them through these situations. But by and large, I've seen an improvement as the year has gone on, getting students back into being members of the classroom, et cetera, and becoming a little more grade appropriate in their behaviors, so to speak. And we knew it was going to take some time. This isn't just us, national. So it is a result of the pandemic. And we feel we have a good handle on it. And I have to say the last 2 months, I've seen a significant difference in all of our schools in those areas. We use a universal mental health screening for grades 7 and 8 and SOS for grade 6. Doing screenings with our students provides some good information, often proactive information that allows us to work with students who are struggling in various areas and have that conversation, provide the necessary supports to get them back to where they need to be. And if we can't do that, we certainly recommend outside services to help as well. Community communication, I want to once again commend Principal Everhart for the LMS Roadshow, so to speak. Sometimes it's really difficult to get some of our parents in our schools for a variety of reasons. And Jason has embraced the reality of that and has gone out to various communities and met parents where they live in community centers, etc. Met with great success, far less anxiety when you do that, and some good conversations are happening. So thanks again, Jason, for forging out in that area for us. And that's about it for this section. I mean, we talked about these things before. Touchscreen TVs for technology. Makerspace Mondays is a nice addition to the middle school. The more hands-on kinesthetic learning that we can give our students, it really does provide opportunities for long-lasting learning. So I'm really glad to see that they're promoting those kinds of activities. High school, CIA. Again, they're working hard incorporating UDL practices at the high school level. I certainly noticed those practices being put into place in their classrooms as well. They are embarking, as I already said, science, but we're putting art and music in there as well. To review, we have a 6-year curriculum cycle, and that means every 6 years we want to have reviewed every curriculum in our district. That helps keep us current. And it also provides an opportunity for our teachers and a group to really reflect in terms of what are the key learning components that our students need to be successful. And they need to be aligned. It needs to be a progression from grade to grade. Excited about our new PACE program at the high school. We've talked about this before. We're at a point in our district where we have that critical mass to keep some students in our district that we couldn't keep in our district before. We have the philosophy that it's much better to educate students in our community. And I'm just pleased that now we have a PACE program in all of our schools. We're complete in terms of that program, and we're reaping benefits for keeping these students as part of our community. Bridge program, if you remember when we talked about this, every school, especially high school, have students that may be out for a variety of reasons, including medical reasons. When they reintegrate into our school system, if they don't have those additional supports to reintegrate, it's almost 100% of the time overwhelming for students to integrate back in. So having somebody in this program, identifying our students' needs, determining how we integrate students makes all the difference in the world. And by that, I mean, maybe you only start with half your courses for the first 2 weeks if you're caught up, but then you tackle the other half of your courses and the close monitoring. I mean, one of the biggest stressors that our high school has is, in terms of our students, is academic stress. And that's a huge stress for our students. Anything that we can do to help minimize that stress is going to be beneficial for everybody. PD, culturally responsive instruction, social emotional learning again. And I've gone through that, but you can see the consistency from school to school, which is so important. Climate culture, we created and adopted a new universal mental health screening again at the high school. I had an opportunity to go through the results with our counselors more correctly, and it was excellent information to have. And there were a number of students as a result of this that received some personalized attention and further supports if needed. So I'm a big fan of mental health screening, and it's something that we're definitely going to continue to do from year to year. Our Great Kindness Challenge was a huge success this year. Name calling week. I always have to apologize to Keith Duvall because I was one of the judges for the door contest, and I didn't pick his door, and he's never let me forget it. But I'm sure next year he's going to up his game, and he'll be in the top three at least. So it was a great day for everybody. I was so impressed with the interaction of staff and students. At high school, that's not easy at times, but everybody was pumped and had a great time. And we have continued to offer engaging events for students, homecomings, every form of dance. We reintroduced our unified basketball and bowling and unified track this year. It was really nice to get those programs up and running again. And we certainly have had some positive results and comments for putting time and energy into those programs. Very worthwhile programs. We created a few new clubs. DECA, I've always wanted a DECA club at the high school, and this year was the first year. Took a while. It's there, it's running. Our students that are involved in DECA are really flourishing. And does everybody know what DECA is? Did you tell me?
It's the business.
Yeah, it stands for Distributive Education Clubs of America, and it focuses on business and leadership skills. They've gone to a number of meetings throughout the state, and it's just nice to see we have a group of students. And this was a club that was initiated by students, not by staff. So that makes it even more powerful. And we're currently collaborating with our student leaders to plan a second Student Mental Health and Wellness Day in May, which I think is really important as well. And our Flex Block, we revised it this year, and I'm hoping to see a further revision next year and taking a look at our high school schedule and changing it up a bit, making it more of a waterfront schedule. And also perhaps taking a look at those flex blocks as study halls as well, and decreasing the number of study halls. Because if you have a period of time where students have teachers available to help them, makes all the difference in the world when they're struggling. Community communication. We offered student internships for the Mass Hire program. We obviously have continued with our dual enrollment partnership with Middlesex College, which I'm always excited about. Very important that we continue with our Holocaust survivor presentation. You can tell when I have to close schools, I don't sleep for a couple of days. So I'm probably experiencing a little bit of that tonight. I have one eye open and communicating with GPW all night. So that's just part of what you do when you close schools. They just finished the college fair, and college representative visits are still ongoing. Very important time of year for our juniors. Seniors, a lot of them have already been placed in various colleges and universities. They still do the Special Olympic polar plunge. Give them a lot of credit for that. And beyond that, I don't think I could survive a polar plunge anymore. And very aware and dedicated to helping people in need within our community and beyond. We continue to connect with community businesses and organizations. A few of us took a trip to Paul's Diner, where some of our students are working, and had a great lunch and had an opportunity to have a conversation with them when they were working in the restaurants. Our RILA program is a leadership program sponsored by the Littleton Rotary. I'm part of Rotary, so I can say we send 7 to 10 students a year in the summer. It's an incredible leadership program for our students. We're looking for people that are students that can really benefit from that opportunity to gain confidence in making a bigger difference, public speaking, etc., and make friendships beyond Littleton. We have them come back and speak to us in the fall after they've attended this program, and the stories that they tell us. It's incredible. It's really humbling to see what the progress they've made with this leadership academy. Technology, really nothing to add there. We're just following our plan within our district. And priorities, so I have a clock in front of me, so we'll see where we are here. Another 5 minutes, I promise I'll be done. Most important priority that we have is we need to continue to meet the learning needs of all of our students post-pandemic. We've always had this philosophy, but it's more important as ever. I'm confident that we are narrowing the learning challenges in our math assessments round 2. I've already had a chance to look at the grade levels, and I'm pleased with the results. And usually there's a dip in the second administration and the third administration. It goes back up. I didn't see much of a dip, and I'm just pleased with what I'm seeing when I look at the assessments. And we always have an eye on what do our students need to be successful in college, career, and future ready. We use the statement future ready because a number of the jobs that our students are going to be involved in don't even exist yet. And so what we need to do when we look at the portrait of a graduate is ensure that we're giving the skills that our students need to be resilient, take risks, and learn all the time. Lifelong learning is so important, as we all know. Wellness, and continued focus on student staff wellness. You had a robust wellness presentation a few meetings ago. Instructional practices, nothing new there, just everything we've been talking about all year. And our tri-district PD day, that is such a great day for us to get together with other districts and work on strategies that are common to the 3 districts. The friendships and the sharing of academic ideas within those 3 districts has made a huge difference, not only in our district, but the other 2 districts as well. National development we talked about. Curriculum review cycles are alive and well. We've created an online registration that we're going to be using next year. I'm really excited about this, something that I've wanted to see for years in our district. Special thanks to our technology department. And it's also a returning online registration feature as well. So it's going to be accessed through our student program called Aspen. So parents will be able to log in there, K through 12, check their forms, or if they're new, fill out a form, and everything's going to be electronic from this point on. So we're going to get rid of the paper. And the frustration, I remember myself as a parent, even though I was a superintendent of the district, I had to fill these forms out every year for my kids, and no information ever changed. So it's important information that we have. A reminder to our parents, this information is pertinent. So please get it into us, because if we ever have an emergency, we need to be able to contact you with your emergency contacts immediately. We can't be fumbling around trying to find this information when we have 1,700 students in our district. So I urge you, and I'm doing this because our return rate this year wasn't as good as it could have been. This is pertinent, important information that we need. So please help us out in that area. Technology initiatives I've already talked about. And we're moving forward with a K-12 digital citizenship program. Next meeting, I'm going to be sharing some exciting news about a partnership we created with another company that's going to provide further resources to our families and students, which we need. I think we're all looking at what our students need to be responsible users of technology, and it's not just little, it goes way beyond. That brings me to the end of my presentation more correctly. And if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them. If not, I'm going to turn it back over to Justin.
I actually do have a couple, just a couple. First of all, I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. I love to see the alignment between the schools, and as we will see with the budget. And I'm really glad that almost none of this is a surprise. Like I think the people who've been setting the agenda and doing the presentations throughout the year have really prepared us for this conversation. I appreciate that. I do have a couple of questions, just picking up on a couple of things. You mentioned field trips. In the past, before COVID, we did Nature's Classroom, we did the Washington, D.C. trip. Are those on the horizon? Are we revisiting those?
We're revisiting those field trips. We've been, I don't want to speak for Jason, but conversations I've had with Jason is every now and again you need to shake things up. Just because we've gone to Nature's Classroom for 20 years Doesn't mean that that's the best opportunity for our students during present time. Reviewing the DC trip, it's becoming very, very expensive, and we need to be really, cautious in terms of we're not excluding students from trips. And with the cost of that trip now, it's getting harder and harder to come up with money for people that can't afford to go. So we're looking at alternatives. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Jason.
Yeah, we did a trip last year. We're doing the same thing for our eighth graders. It's a single day New Hampshire trip, which the feedback has been nothing but great. It incorporates everything that they love about these field trips, being on the bus, the dinner dance cruise, right? The good times without their cost and time. It's also a lot to ask for staff to be away from their families for 4 days while they go on this trip. And so it meets all those needs in a cost-effective way. We'll certainly look at exploring, but there are other issues with changes in the rules around busing. They have to swap out drivers every so often. And so that adds to the cost. If you were to go to the place long, you have to stop. And so there are a lot of schools that don't even do DC anymore. So we'll certainly look at it moving forward, but I'm thrilled with this trip. I think it accomplishes everything we want. It still celebrates our eighth graders without burdening our families with, $1,000 tab.
Great, thank you. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to. No, fine. I just know we were talking about things. Those just come up.
Good question.
The other thing is, I'm curious. You mentioned behaviors teachers haven't seen before, but you also mentioned progress.
I
So
can
I'm
see the spark in your eye when I said that.
this isn't the meeting to talk about that, but I was interested and I was glad to hear that we have a system and things can be getting better. And I'm also eager to hear more about the MAP test in the future. I guess the third thing we're talking about curriculum, again, alignment, curriculum instruction and assessment. I never refer to that as CIA. I love that. But if I recall correctly, maybe earlier this year or last year, we heard about the new world languages or foreign languages curriculum standards. And one of the things they suggested was introducing world languages at the lower elementary or lower grades than we currently do. And I was just wondering if that's something we're talking about or.
We've had conversations. One of the challenges, Brad, of doing that is we have X number of hours of instruction. And if we're going to add that, what goes?
Sure.
And then how do we find the money to hire language specialists? Which language do we promote? And it's limiting because of the amount of time we could actually spend on the language. Something we're keeping our conversations alive. I've had foreign language classes in some of my school systems before. They were very, very difficult to keep going. We have a set of staff. If they retire or move on, it's very difficult to find replacement staff. You're offering not a lot of time when you're learning a foreign language. I'm not saying it doesn't help, but injection of time is so important if you're learning another language. So we're still having those conversations, but it's just time.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not advocating for a position. I just wanted to, as we're thinking about looking forward to the budget, as we're reviewing what discussions we've had in the past, I thought I was just interested to make sure we're still talking about it. And that's all.
I'm glad you brought it up. My granddaughter is in a French immersion school, choice my parents, and I'm certainly supported 100%. And it's been interesting for me to watch her development. She's in grade 2. And when they start off, it's a projection of French most full day. This year, they're backing off a bit and doing a little more instruction in English. And I'm watching her vocabulary building really closely because of that, because French and English are very different languages, and she manages really well, which is intriguing to me. And what I find really interesting is she won't speak French to us unless we sign. So she doesn't come home and speak French to her parents, who know more or less French than my wife and I. And she hasn't figured out that there's power in knowing a second language in front of her parents. But so far, so good. And I was a little worried, to be honest with you, especially starting out in French, which isn't there all the time. So thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks very much, Superintendent Clenchey. And I think it's important that we, although we've touched it in depth on many of those items that were just shared, I think it's nice to get a quick review because we're getting ready to go over the budget, and we want to show where all the money gets spent. So this next slide is just timeline related to the budget subcommittee's work with the superintendent's office and the business manager. So this is a process that starts back in October with central office identifying initial budget priorities, carries through until where we are today in March, which is where we hope to finalize and go through the budget, which then would be handed off to town for town meeting in May. This year in particular, I feel that the school committee at large has been more involved in the budget process, which is a great thing, because we've been talking about some of the ways to spend money as it relates to busing. So many of you were able to attend that meeting that took place in January and in February with members of the finance committee and the select board as we were discussing our budget and received initial feedback as it related to many of the departments coming in potentially over budget. So it's been a lot of work to get here, and I again thank everyone for their efforts. But we move on to the next slide. As we go through the information, we're going to talk about different cost centers. This is just a review of that information for the viewers. So regular ed, all costs associated with regular education. Special ed of note does not include the transportation costs associated with that line item. And then these other line items might need a little bit more explanation, so I'll go through those. So student and staff support, that includes guidance, nursing, technology, curriculum, professional development, and the salaries that would be associated with some of those positions. Other instructions, co-curricular, extracurricular cost centers like athletics. Cost center 5 is system administration. That's the superintendent's office, all the folks and staff that work there, school committee costs. Here, those are getting out of control. 6 is the school administration. That's principals, office staff at each building. Transportation costs, that's been the hot item, of course, right? So regular special ed transportation costs. And then line item number 8, facilities and maintenance, operations, maintenance, utilities, custodial costs, contracted services. I think many of us in the audience can have felt the pain with the utilities at home as well. So we're all kind of familiar with that line item. As we move on to the next slide, this is a review of where we started. So this was our first look at trying to put together a budget for fiscal year 2024. Sort of working from the top down. If we were to retain current staffing levels, which is always a desire, that ensues a cost of living adjustment as well as steps in lane progression for the staff as they move through their tenure and increased education. That number is 803,000. We were looking at 3 additional line items related to salary. That was a $26,000 adjustment. Team chair positions, essentially elevating a couple staff members to a more of an administrative role. There was a third-party study performed as it related to a review of our special education program. There was a recommended $50,000 spend there for administrative support. And then we feel we're in a position right now where we need to hire a 6th grade generalist teacher at a cost of approximately $85,000. So an additional 161 spend on top of the 803 would have put the projected salary increase for fiscal year 2023 at $964,000. And then we have other line items. So there's the utility increase that I think we're all aware of, it's taking place. That's water, natural gas, electric. We get 2 line items here for busing. The first relates to the fact that we were exiting or ending a 5-year contract with the current provider. They needed to put out to bid a new contract for a new 5-year process. It was estimated to come in around $113,000. And then we had estimated an additional $280,000 for increased busing costs in the event that we wish to move to a 2-tier system from the 3-tier system for the earlier start times. And then we've got some other line items there, operational increases. There was an approved substitute cost increase for pay earlier in the year. And then we reviewed this information as well, but that's an out-of-district tuition spend, $205,000 as it relates to state approved increases for students that are going out. So our first blush at this was a $1.7 million increase on top of last year's budget, which would have been which translates to 7.4%. Of note, that's of the 7.4% or the 1.7 million, 57% of that is salaries and 43% of that is something other than salaries. subset of the other, our busing increase, our busing cost, the incremental cost of busing would represent about 23% of the increase in the 1.7. On the next slide is a review of some of the information that we were going through back in January and February. So the initial feedback from the town was that 7.4 would not be passable. They asked us to try to whittle this down to 6%, which translates to a reduction of $320,000. These were the line items we used to accomplish that. So the $57,000 salary for teacher assistant positions, I just want to highlight, that's not a cut to any positions. Those are essentially positions that were posted that had not yet been filled. And we're going to remove those from posting. So those are positions that we wanted to fill, but we won't be able to. The $50,000 administrative support position, the administrative support cost that's been cut from the initial budget was that the recommended special education spend for the administrative support. We're going to look at other ways to accomplish that goal. Operational expenses, $10,000, no copies, no extra paper. We're just going to make sure we're really tight with that next year. And then what we were going to look here was sort of split some of the cost as it relates to the out of district tuition. So initially we would had asked for 205 and we rolled over 102 to the appropriated, and we'll handle the balance at a school choice. And we had also agreed that we would look at increasing revenue from busing those that are required to pay busing because they're K-2 inside 2 miles or 7 to 12, regardless of distance. There's a bus fee associated with it. The goal initially was to raise 100,000. I see a hand up to Mr. Austin.
Just to clarify for those watching, that we're going to cut all the costs for sped out of district placements.
Yeah,
where it's just coming from different lines. Okay,
yeah.
just I don't want my seeing the slide and saying we're cutting 102,000. We're just paying from different accounts.
Thanks.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If I say things and they don't make sense, feel free to ask questions to clarify.
Gotcha.
So moving on to the next slide is the sort of the final adjustments for the proposed budget. So the previous slide showed, previous 2 slides showed 803 for salary increases to retain current staffing levels. In the upper right hand corner, we've got 746,000. That's just the removal of those 2 teaching assistant positions that we had posted. We're looking to hire. So current staff, steps and lanes, 3% COLA is 746,000. We are going to move forward with the $26,000 team adjustments, the generalist teacher for 6th grade, and the substitute costs. So the total salary increase projected for 2023, $887,000. That represents now 64% of our increase.
Sorry, you keep saying 2023, but you mean 2024.
Sorry,
Okay,
yeah. Increase on top of 2023.
I see.
Yeah. Thanks again. And then we've got a number of line items outside of salary. We're continuing with the $100,000 budgeted increase for utilities. We've got the 113, which is the renewal on the contract, and then the $180,000 spend as it relates to moving to the 2-tier system, and then the 102 for the out of district tuition. Again, all the bills will be paid. It's just where it's coming from. So that non-staffing spend or budgeted increase is 495,000 and change, which represents a 1.383 increase on top of 2023 for the 2024 fiscal year, which is exactly 6%. So this one's pretty clean. We've got the 2023 appropriated school committee budget, 23,050,247. There's your increase that was just shown, 1.38315, which grand totals a fiscal year 2024 school request town appropriation budget of $24,433,262. Okay, so now we'll just slice and dice it a couple different ways for you. Salaries and expenses. So last year's salaries, suppose current year salaries, is the 17.181. we're looking at a differential spend of an extra 887,000, which it basically is the substitute cost, the steps and lanes, and a 3% COLA adjustment for a grand total spend of $18,069,016 on salaries. It's a 5.1% increase on top of the previous year. If I was to back out the team chairs, the grade 6 generalists, and the substitute spend, it's actually it's a 4.3% increase year over year for current staffing. We wanted to highlight that. And then we've got our additional expenses, which was 5.863 million, climbing to 6.364. It's the $495,000 increase, which we highlighted before. That's the utility spend, the extra busing costs associated with the contract, and the move to a 2-tier schedule, as well as the increase in the out-of-district tuition spend. That represents an 8.4% increase for that line item. In total, we've got the 13838 grand total 6% increase. Okay, so now we're going to look at appropriated versus revolving dollar spend. So appropriated or taxpayer dollars, and we've got the various line items here. So in that regular ed spend, which was 92.90, climbing to 9.654, represents the change there of 3.9%. That essentially is just it's the sub increase that's going in there, the sub pay. It's the grade 6 generalist hire that's in there, and it's just regular steps and lanes as well as that COLA adjustment. In the special ed and pupil services bucket there, we have the team chair positions, as well as just regular steps and lanes and COLA adjustment for the staff associated with that. In the other instruction, that's just a salary increase there as well. System administration, that's a salary increase. School admin, that's a salary increase. Other instruction, actually, I want to backtrack. That's just likely the stipend increase associated with all those extracurricular and co-curricular activities. The system and school administration, those are salary increases for those particular positions, and then busing is essentially the town appropriated cost share of the busing increase.
The school administration number is higher than the others. Does that reflect taking the teachers and making them the 26,000, making people leaders?
No, we had one of our administrators in the educator line, so we just did a transfer.
Okay, that's
responsible for the increase.
Got it. Thank you.
I think that's a move that took place last year.
It took place a couple of years ago, but just slower.
Making up.
Slower adjustment.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay. And then this is the reuse of our revolving funds. So these are funds that come in every year that then get spent. The regular education in this line item here, for the spend of $767,000, we allocate about $250,000 of school choice revenue for this bucket line item, and then we're carrying a figure of $267,000 as it relates to additional busing in that particular line item for regular ed. The special education and pupil services of 1.65. That's largely all the circuit breaker funds that are going to come in for this year and get spent for next year, as well as additional grant money that's supposed to likely take place. You'll note that there's a large additional usage of revolving funds as it relates to student and staff support, and that's the saying that there's no such thing as a free lunch. So with lunch being free, usage is up, costs are up. The cost associated with that is up, but it's on a reimbursement basis from that federal money that's been made available. So while we're spending more, we're receiving more. It gets offset. And then we've got some other line items, minor adjustments, and then you'll see the transportation costs of 100 growing to 200. That's our desire to try to raise an extra $100,000 from user fees. Okay. This slide here just totals the previous two slides. Town appropriated and revolving. You can note the changes per line item year over year. I'll note that, well, the town appropriated budgets to the tune of 24 million are total appropriated and revolving to spend of a budget approximate spend of 28.468, an increase of 2.168. Of that portion, 1.383 million is from the appropriated. There'll be a change in some revolving funds, of course. And then on the next slide, you'll see how our budget for 2024 is going to affect our school choice balance. So it's estimated that we're going to end the school year, or the fiscal year, 6/30/23 with a balance of 2.757 in our school choice funds, which is revenue that we've received over the years from students opting into Littleton. We spend a good portion of that. We spend $250 annually and bank some for rainy days or exorbitant expenses that we might run into. So we basically showed here the 2.7 ending balance 2020 fiscal year 2023, an additional projected $450,000 of revenue associated with the school choice seats for next year. And then these are the planned spends. So we always take $250,000 and roll it towards regular ed cost salaries. We've got that additional $267,000 spend that we're going to dip into savings for the busing contract. We're going to move forward with that recommended $50,000 spend on the administrative support as a result of that third party study. We feel that's important. And then also we need to pay, obviously, the out of district tuition spend as it relates to that cost increase. So we weren't able to work all of that into the appropriated budget. So $102,000 will come out of school choice, which is completely reasonable and fair. So our usage of school choice funds next year is projected to be $669,000, even though we're only going to take it $450,000. So for the first time in a long time, our school choice funds are going to go down, but that's okay. We're hearing of other districts needing to make budget cuts, and we're in a position here where we did cut our budget from 7 and change down to 6. We believe that it's a fair budget, and we're going to dip into some of our funds here to accomplish some really important goals that are necessary for the district. Of note, our $2.5 million reserve and school choice fund represents a 10% of our appropriated budget. So we still feel that we're being fiscally responsible here, good stewards of the money, and plenty of funds left over in the event that we do find ourselves in a pickle at some point in time. And these could be those future pickles. So just wanted to highlight that, you know, what keeps us up at night.
It'd be a great slide title.
Yeah, pickles.
Future pickles.
So,
Next year.
you know,
Yeah.
of note, it's no secret. Inflation's out of control, right? So we're all feeling at the pump and at the grocery store and on the utility bills. And the school district is a consumer of many of those products and services as well. So it's just something that we're keeping an eye on. You may not be aware, but the bus money's going up.
Why are we just hearing about this now?
So the bus contract is a 5-year contract. It's not fixed pricing. Every year there's a projected increase that'll be tied to some sort of consumer price index or inflationary measure, and we just need to keep an eye on that as well. The associated service, maintenance service contracts as well. Town administrator was here a couple weeks ago, voicing some concern about not a doomsday, but a situation the next couple of years where revenue received by the town might not keep pace with the demands of many of the budgets. And you know, he's got earmarked, or the town's got earmarked roughly 5%, can't guarantee it, of course. So there's a concern that over time, depending upon what happens with the town and the commercial tax base, some of the projects that are going on, what could be appropriated for the district. And how the district might view, how the town might view over time the pros and cons associated with the two-tier system. I mean, I think we all think it's going to be incredibly important and valuable. But that plan is only successful if over a period of time, it becomes part of the appropriated budget. There's also ongoing negotiations with the Littleton Educators Association on a new collective bargaining agreement. So we're hard at work on that. That's moving along nicely, I'd like to report. We've also touched upon this as well as the town's growing. And our classroom space currently is not growing, and our there are more and more kids showing up in our classes, which is a good thing. They're here because we live in a nice town with a great school system. It lessens our ability to offer school choice seats. So we just need to be aware that as we fill the classrooms with Littleton residents, we lose the ability to secure some of that revenue that we counted on to grow the school choice fund where it sits today. And then, of course, as everyone's aware, there's some large development projects potentially taking place in town. Timeline on those remains unknown. So we'll just, as school committee members and as citizens of this town, we'll just have to do our best to stay informed and work with the select board, the finance committee, and the planning board so that we can get a good handle on how that might impact our classroom space, transportation costs, and other spends that relates to regular and special education. So it's good news. We still do have some SR funds related to COVID relief that we're going to use by the end of this fiscal year, right, Steve? They need to be used by this June?
No, by the end of June 24th.
Okay, even better. So June 30th, 2024, we'll be able to use these funds as it relates to mental health, learning, social, emotional impacts. Again, we've talked ad nauseum about this move from 9 buses to 14 buses, but it's not really a concern. It's just something that we're going to have to deal with. Something else that we're going to have to deal with, which is the projected $100,000 additional raise as it relates to user fees. This would be, again, those that take the bus to and from school, as well as the athletics programs, extracurricular activities that involve busing. I believe if not next school committee, maybe the school committee after that, we'll have a discussion on where we feel it's appropriate to peg those new fees. And then, of course, the out-of-district tuition spend was up, what, 14%? State approved at 14%. So that's the cost that was just passed on to us, which we're paying for. And then no one knows how long this free lunch thing is going to last. But like I said, usage is up. We get reimbursed, but only to a certain extent, because I don't think we're getting reimbursed 100% because of all the extra labor and or supplies that go into providing a free lunch.
Just can I ask one clarifying question about this?
Right.
Just because someone could take away, hey, they're raising bus fees by 100,000. That's something we have to discuss. But according to my reading the slide, the expectation is if we don't raise bus fees we need the 100,000. If it doesn't come from the families, we have school choice funds where we have to figure out what the appropriate rate increase might be. But
Correct. So
but that's a future discussion for the budget.
Right.
We just know we're gonna need 100,000.
Yeah, the presentation assumed an additional revenue source of an additional $100,000 of user fees. The plan is to, at a future school committee next meeting, it might be the meeting after, I think, what we're going to take a look at is $100,000 really reasonable to ask these families. Does it need to be 50,000, or is it somewhere in between? And how do we hope to accomplish that so it's as fair as it possibly can be for all families? Then we have a thank you. So we just have a thank you to all these wonderful organizations in town that support our school district either through monetary donations or working with the town, volunteer hours, etc. So I will open it up for questions as it relates to this point in time. We do have the business manager present as always.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So we were just talking about the using the sports fees, athletic fees to fund the buses, which, like you said, we still have to figure that out. But is there any cause to kind of fold these increases in? Because we haven't increased bus fees or athletic fees in what, like 10 years?
Long number of years.
A really long time, which is
17, 20
phenomenal.
years.
it's great for all of the families that we're kind of getting that off of their bill, but now here we are front loading it on these families kind of all at once. Is there some type of policy or something we need to kind of fold in to either reevaluate these fees every few years to make sure that it's incremental increases and we're not just dumping it on, you know, these certain classes that have to kind of make up for these deficits that we might find?
It's certainly something that, you know, school committee next year or school committees in future years could choose to tackle annually.
Yeah.
I did hear there, you know, I don't know if it was superintendent or business manager, but it was like, should we think about a 3% increase? Once we reestablish new rates, should we think about putting into place a 3% increase annually, just so that we don't get into a situation where we're 5, 7, 10 years down the road saying, hey, we haven't looked at this.
And it was a conscious decision of previous school committees to not raise fees. That was one of their strategies. And I think now we're at a different time. And like the bigger question we have to ask ourselves is, what is an appropriate increase for families? And go with that, and then we'll make decisions in terms of how do we move forward with increasing fees from that point on. It's manageable for families.
But Stacey, I think that was my question as well, is that I think this committee will make a decision about how, kind of looking at how much money we need to raise and what's appropriate to ask of families in the next couple meetings, I think. So we're empowered to make that decision.
Yeah.
For next year, maybe next couple of years at least.
Yeah, because we'll be in charge of kind of trying to, I mean, knowing that we have 5% appropriated from the town. We know that we're hopefully going to get that. Paid. They could decrease that again. We've got athletic fees going up. We've got school bus fees going up, and we've got all these buses we need to fund. So I'm just, obviously we have to be conscious with not only being really diligent with our budget now, but also trying to save as much as we can. It doesn't seem like there's much we can trim off here if the case does become in the next few years that we're not going to get the budget that we need. So just saying that out loud, that we're all aware of those issues. So we're just,
As the superintendent says, that's what keeps us up at night.
I wish I was the only thing.
Keeps me up.
But you're right.
So, you know, because you're asking a question about athletic fees, I mean, I've started to look at that. I've got some information to share. You know, at the meeting, and we discussed this, and I can tell you that towns do it a number of different ways. So there are towns that don't charge at all. There are towns that charge more than us. There are towns that charge different. You know, it's more expensive to do soccer than it is to do cross country. So we have a pretty simple fee schedule, and I think the residents appreciate that, and but we could slice and dice it any way we like, so sure we'll upset somebody.
So hang tight, because we do have that data, and we'll present that.
Yeah.
Next meeting or whenever that.
Most likely the next week.
and the last question that I had, and Brad kind of touched on it, but so I understand that the 29% increase for the buses for transportation, that's the percent change from what we, I think, originally had asked for to what we are getting now. And then there's the 27 or 28% increase for the student staff support. There's that change there. Can you be more specific with that? Because like I get that those are the two biggest percentages that we see a percent change. And I get the bus one because I've been involved in that decision. But the student staff support is another big one as well. So I guess I wasn't completely clear as to what that was. It was a
Smaller dollar, but big.
Yeah, so the student and staff support was mostly food service operations.
okay.
Because because all the meals are free, we've doubled our meal output at the schools, and so that's additional revenue reimbursement we're getting from state and federal sources. So that all goes through the revolving fund. So that's all reflected in that number.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Comes in, goes out.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's fine. Okay. Right.
I just had, what did you?
No.
I just had, I guess one comment is two. One is, I feel like we've really been in the weeds with the budget this year, and makes me much more comfortable having this conversation and vote. In previous years, we've been preoccupied with a lot of things, but we've had a lot of in-depth conversations about budget stuff. These numbers aren't surprising to me. And shouldn't be surprised if the communities are paying attention to it, and I think that's good. The other thing just to note is I'm really glad we're acting on the outside report, and we're going to commit to funding the special ed, the SPED administrative assistant, because we heard from those people that will free up a lot of experts' time to do things other than like paperwork, and that'll help our students and our families. So I'm glad this budget, we're talking about how budgets reflect values. I'm glad this budget reflects that commitment.
Great. Any other questions? No. Great. There's some special language here for a motion. No one has it in front of you.
I don't have it in front.
Oh, I can do it. So
Chair.
I'll make it. So I move to approve the fiscal year 2024 school department budget as follows. Total town appropriated budget for the school department of $24,433,262. And school revolving fund usage of $4,035,602 for a total fiscal year 2024 school department budget of $28,468,846.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Jen's no longer with us.
No, I am.
Oh, okay. Hey, Jen.
But that was dramatic. Not on the call, Justin. It's not on the call.
Sorry, I didn't see who I lifted there.
All good.
This will be a roll call vote since Jen's remote, so, Brad?
Brad also votes yes.
Brad, yes, Stacy,
Stacy Maris says yes.
Dino,
Vinod Patel, yes.
Jen,
Jen Gold, yes.
Justin McCarthy, yes as well. Unanimous vote. Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. And at this point in time, I will accept a motion to close the fiscal year 2024 budget public hearing.
I motion to close the fiscal year 2024 budget public hearing.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote again. Brad,
Brad also votes yes.
Stacy,
Stacy Maris, yes.
Dino,
Vinod Patel, yes.
Jen,
Jen Gold, yes.
Justin McCarthy votes yes as well. So we have closed the budget hearing for 2024. And we will pause. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. So if we have anyone with us in the room or anyone at home that would like to speak before the school committee, this is your opportunity. Go back to the table.
Welcome back.
All right, so hearing none, we will look to adjourn. We do have a need for an executive session this evening. So let me find my quick notes here. Since I have this information, no one else has anything to discuss just before I close out? Okay. So let's see, I move that we adjourn to executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation discussion with no intent to return to open session. This will be a roll call vote as well. Second, so motion made and seconded. We'll move to a roll call vote. Brad?
Brad also votes yes.
Brad Austin votes yes. Jen?
Jen, yes.
Casey?
Stacy Maris, yes.
Dino?
Vinod Patel, yes.
And Justin McCarthy votes yes as well. We have adjourned.